we'll come back. We'll have another chance to talk about how you guys feel. But I am very pleased to present to you a woman that I just recently met. So for the introduction, I was going to say a lot of emotional stuff because she really moved me when I met her. But I'll stick to the official stuff. Nyaradzayi Gumbonzvanda. Sorry if I messed that up. I really shouldn't because, you know, we're African sisters from another mother, is the General Secretary of the Worldwide YWCA, and she is joining us from Geneva. Nyaradzayi, can you see and hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you, Farah, and I can see the amazing delegates that you have in the room.
They're all waving to you. Now, listen, when I had a chance, I've sort of been stalking Nyaradzayi for a little while, I think, probably about 6 or 7 months, and I'd met Nyaradzayi through a mutual friend over the internet, and I went and did my research, and I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but if I have to fly to Geneva to meet this woman, I will, and that's exactly what I did. And after my meeting, I walked away and I thought, this woman is an absolute powerhouse. She has done so much in her life. I don't even know where to start, but what I would say is she is trained as a human rights lawyer, and has extensive experience in conflict resolution, which I think lots of people see today. But at the time that when you were doing it, probably people didn't understand how important that discipline came to be. And in 2007, Nyaradzayi joined the Worldwide YWCA, which everyone here in this room will know this organization. There's no doubt in my mind. But just for those who are maybe watching from home, this is probably one of the largest network of young women who are leading social and economic change in 125 different countries. So you're not busy at all. And it's great that you could make the time to join us today. But, you know, Nyaradzayi didn't come to this position without a lot of hard work, without a lot of training, and she spent some time at the United Nations. So I'm going to stop, giving you what I think is Nyaradzayi by Farah Mohammed. I will turn the mic over to you immediately and ask you to sort of introduce yourself the way you want to be introduced, and tell us, you know, how do you manage to galvanize 125 different countries? I'm trying to galvanize 21 young women. I think they're probably galvanizing me. So please, over to you, and explain to us what's the magic potion that you've been able to get all of your members to really take hold of this issue.
Thanks so much, Farah, and my very warm greetings to the amazing delegates for the 2013 Girls Summit there in Moscow. I'm so excited to be joining this discussion. Let me just start by what drives me is these young women in that room and the young women in the world. They just drive me every day to do what I do, because I know that each one of the women in the world, each one of the girls in the world, each one of the young women in the world, they have a dream, they have a passion, they have skills, they have knowledge, but also they are looking for opportunities. They are looking for possibilities. So for me, that drives me every day to be a leader of the World YWCA. As you have said, we are in 125 countries. I've just come from Canada, so
yay.
Hi to the delegation from Canada. And we reach 25 million women and girls in the world. And every day to wake up and say, how do we connect the dots? How do we connect the energy of the millions of women around the world? So when you invited me to this panel, I wanted to maybe reflect on a couple of things. First, in terms of how the Girls 20 Summit is an amazing community mobilization of the voices of young women, especially to address the issues that we've just been discussing around the rights of young women to make decisions about their lives. I know we are discussing about early forced and child marriage, but ultimately it is about young women being able to make fundamental decisions about their lives and having the necessary opportunities and the necessary knowledge and the necessary support around them for that to happen. So this Girls 20 Summit for me is very critical. It's part of the possibilities that we have for young women, for girls around the world to be part of the discussion. In the world YWCA and the YWCA movement, we believe that girls and young women should have a safe space within which you do crucial conversation. Whether that crucial conversation is about employment or crucial conversation about education or about relationship things or about the struggles of going through life, about just being a citizen in your country and a global citizen, we believe that safe, empowering spaces for girls is critical. And that is what we do all the time in the YWCA, is to be a space within which young women and girls can come together. The second piece, which is very critical for us and which links to the discussion, is around mentorship and support. And that mentorship and support comes from peer to peer, girls to girls. It also comes from the perspective of skills. What skills do you need? What knowledge do you need? How do you get a mentor to enable you to do that? But also, I think, to come back to the discussion that we are having today on early forced and child marriage, is how can girls have somebody they trust, whom they can talk to about difficult personal issues? Because as you heard Kikenya speak, she needed to talk to somebody to enable her to escape child marriage. So for us, the issue of mentorship is also about having people you trust in your lives, whom you can converse with, whom you can confide in, and who can treat that with confidentiality and with the support that you need. So the third and the fourth, which is critical for us, is around education. When you talk about community action, is education and education and education. And that education is not just book education. It's not just learning ABC. It's learning about the world. It's learning about the systems of how the world runs itself. I think for me, it's amazing that we have a great group of young women from the G20 countries plus in that room to learn around how the G20 works as part of the critical systems of decision and for influencing. And so I'm also looking forward to the discussion around what will come out as the key messages for the community. So education and learning is both about having the necessary skills for career, for opportunities in your lives, but it is also about negotiating yourselves in the world today as a citizen and as a global citizen, and negotiating at the private, very, very private, personal, but also negotiating in the public, and also negotiating with regards to friends and other networks. So far, this is just some preliminary reflections in terms of the amazing G20 summit that is going on.
No, thank you very much for that. I was caught by a couple of things, and I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit because I know you can do it. You've got 125 countries to choose from, but I'd like you to really drill it down for us. Give us an example of an initiative that's happening in one of these countries that is dealing very effectively with the eradication of early forced marriage. What are they doing? How did they get started? As precise as you can, because what we're looking at here is if, in fact, some of these delegates want to go home and they want to start their own initiative to eradicate early forced marriage, it's always best to learn from what's out there rather than try to figure it out on your own. So I'm going to put you on the spot. You're going to have to pick one of the many programs you have, but please tell us a little bit about the program, because I know that earlier today I asked people, are you shocked that it exists in your country? And I bet you some of these young women are going to go back and say, that's the issue I want to work on. So I've bought you enough time. Now tell us what really works.
Yes, I would like to share a couple of country examples from the world perspective. I'd like to talk about the situation in Zambia, and then I'd like to talk about what the YWCA of Canada is doing in Yellowknife, working with the Inuit communities and the indigenous communities around girls. It's not about child marriage, but it's about giving opportunities to girls, because I think earlier was a question around teenage pregnancy and opportunities, just for us to connect the dots. And I would also like to share about our work in Taiwan, which is around trafficking and migration in the region. So these are the three practical examples I would like to share in terms of our experience. In Zambia, the YWCA has a very integrated program in the communities, in the rural areas, which creates space for girls to come together, working together with the schools, but also offering opportunity for girls who are out of school. Because usually it's easier to reach girls who are in school. You can do a girls' club in school, but for the young women who are out of school, it is much more difficult to reach them. So the YWCA runs a program where the young women who are out of school come to the YWCA twice a week. And those who are married already, but they are girls, they also come to the girls' clubs, to the young women's clubs, because it's very important that we both address the prevention aspect, but also we create opportunities and support to those who are already in marriage, but who still want to go to school. They still want to live a life out of violence, but to negotiate their own relationships. So in Zambia, what we do is a couple of things, 5 things that we do in the program. One is a space within which the young women can talk about their situations. And some of the girls have come, like we've heard from Kikenya, saying they're under pressure within the family. The YWCA brings the family for a discussion together with the girls to say, this is what is happening. This is what she has shared with us. We think there could be other opportunities for this girl to continue to go to school. What is the pressure? To just try to understand the causes that are there within the family. The second piece that the YWCA in Zambia does, in addition to the safe space, is to work closely with the Ministry of Health and the police. So that if there are cases where a young woman has experienced violence or violation, has been violated, like in the case of sexual abuse, the girl is able to receive the necessary counseling and medical services. But also if it is already a criminal case, there is an immediate referral to the police. So it's an integrated service working together very clearly with the public institutions. The third layer of our work is around legislation. The YWCA works together with other NGOs in Zambia to push for legislation. Only last month, we had Zambia passed a law saying we want the age of 18 for girls, for marriage to be at age 18, and also that there is going to be a national campaign for the next 3 years around implementation of that law and addressing that issue. So for us, the issue of having a necessary legislative environment that addresses the issues of child marriage is a critical part of the community action. But for that to happen, it is not only the adult women and men, but also for the girls themselves, for the young women themselves to be the advocates, to be the leaders of championing the issue. Because in the YWCA, we believe that it's important to shift from just vulnerability of young women to leadership of young women, because we know young women have the solution to the issues that they are confronting. So in Zambia, that is part of our critical work that we are doing with some of the amazing women like Inonse, like Chongo Mwila, and others who are there in the community, engaging with their government. The fourth approach that we take is working with the religious and cultural leaders and opinion makers in the community, because it's important to change the norms. It's important to re-clarify that the values and cultures anywhere in the world are not there to reduce the dignity of girls and young women, but should be there to protect their rights and to facilitate their rights. And as I have also heard, and as you have heard Lakshmi say, that we have to continue to say, which religion can any faith community out there raise their hand and say, we support child marriage, we support forced marriage. I think that is a global ask that we can make to the faith communities, because I don't think there's any which can raise their hand and say, yes, we do. But we feel it is either a manipulation or misinterpretation. And therefore, we have to keep the record straight and be able to push for faith leaders, for religious leaders, for cultural leaders to say no to early forced and child marriage as part of the global advocacy. and in Zambia, that is part of the work that we are also doing. The fifth approach that we take is working with the media. We believe that it is very critical. The role of the media today, including social media, is very, very important as part of the community actions to fighting, to early marriage, to prevention, but also to supporting those who are in marriage. The more we tell the stories, the more we are able to understand the magnitude of the issue. And in the YWCA, we always say, one-child marriage is not, we should not condone. So it should not be a question of numbers. We know that each day, 39,000 girls are married off. We know that each year, 14 million girls are married off. We know that within a decade, we may have 142 million of our girls in early or forced marriage. That is unacceptable. Every girl must have a chance in life. That is what we believe in. So in the YWCA in Zambia, we are taking a very concrete approach of community action, from awareness, referral services, safe space, integrated approach with healthcare and legal services, advocacy on legislation, and also the work with the media. We also
Nyaradzayi
in Zambia for a Pan-African.
Nyaradzayi, I see part of the reason I asked you to come on this panel is because you have such wealth of knowledge, but we've got about 15 minutes, and I know that the delegates want to get to you with some questions. So it's almost embarrassing that I'm thinking I can actually cut you off, but I am going to cut you off and ask that if you wouldn't mind, we're
like to listen to the questions, definitely.
Yeah, well, you're going to love some of these questions because they're sort of moving in their seats and ready to ask. So I'm going to go to the floor, and please, if you don't mind, I don't want them to lose the knowledge you wanted to share. So we're going to try to keep the questions really short and the answers short so we can get through as many. And then if we have more time, of course, I'll come back to you and have you tell us about, I think you said Taiwan, and of course, Canada. I want to hear what's going on in Canada. So please, who has a question for Nyaradzayi? Yes.
Yeah, hello, I'm Putri from Indonesia. In Indonesia, the government let the girls will marry in 16 and the boy in 19. Actually, sometimes the girls feel ready to marry in their early young age because of love, maybe unmarried, pregnant, maybe. So is that so we should let them to marry as the personal choice, or I worry about the right or freedoms like that.
Yes, thank you. I think from our work in Indonesia, we have a YWCA in Indonesia. One of the critical issues you are raising is around education and economic opportunities, and whether also the girls can make a personal decision. I think that is one of the issues around child marriage, is around giving opportunities for education, for economic empowerment for girls, but also that at times the families are poor and therefore look at marriage as an option. And I think that is where we have to address the issues of poverty as an underlying issue.
So Nyaradzayi, I'm going to go to Ellie next for her question, but I think that's an interesting observation, is when we're looking again at how do we inform G20 leaders, maybe one of the possible recommendations is to really put the spotlight on poverty, because that is a driving issue toward families making these choices for girls rather than the girls having the option to choose for themselves. So I just park that, and I'll go to Ellie and ask you to ask your question, please.
That was kind of my point, what Farah just said then.
Sorry.
But I also have another one, which is I've just Googled it and looking at like different countries and the ages, and it seems that pretty much every country has one age for boys, and then for girls it's 2, maybe 4 years younger than that. Are there any kind of schemes going to average that out? Because like according to the report that I was reading, in India they're starting to do that, but like no other country seem to realise that it should be equal.
Great question. Nyaradzayi?
Yes, this is a fundamental question that you are raising. It's an issue that we are in the YWCA and also through Girls Not Brides pushing, including in the Human Rights Council, that there should not be differential age groups for boys and for girls, because what it does is to give more opportunities for boys and less opportunities for girls. So it means girls are being married off early, they lose education, they are much younger, and it has a lot of other implications. So the huge advocacy is that globally, our countries must have the age of marriage according to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and which states that age is 18 for both boys and for girls. We need equal opportunity for our boys and our girls in the world, and not to reduce the age of marriage for girls. And that is part of the advocacy we have to continue to do. And again, it links with the issue that Farah has raised around what the G20 countries can do, is that in pushing for an issue like poverty and economic development, it has to do with investing in young women. And part of that investment is changing laws that limit economic capabilities and options for our girls.
Okay, Sumaya, you have a question.
Hi, my name is Sumaya and I represent the African Union, but I'm from Tunisia. So, well, it's more like a remark more than a question. In developing countries, usually the police departments are one of the most corrupted departments. And since that is the rule of the stronger and the patriarchal society thing, I mean, it's not safe to a little girl to go there, to like ask them for help or ask them to protect her. I don't know. What do you think?
Yes, I think we are raising a very important issue, because from the relation, let me start with the African Union. The African Union has just celebrated its 50th anniversary, or in the process, and is saying we need a prosperous Africa, which is at peace with itself. There cannot be a prosperous Africa at peace with itself if young women and girls continue to experience child marriage. And secondly, that the issue of quality of services. The quality of services is very important, whether that is legal services or health services, and therefore corruption undermines quality and access to services. And therefore it is a critical issue to address. And again, the relationship between the G20 and the African Union, in that relationship, the G20 and the African Union must place this issue as part of the key priorities for that relationship that exists.
Great. Now we're going to go to Violette.
Hi, my name is Violette, and I represent France. So in France, there's this kind of big issue where oftentimes immigrants' families who have lived their entire lives in France, their daughters live like 18 years in France. They have all their education in France, and then at age 18, these families send them back in their countries of origin to get married off. It's kind of like, I mean, girls marry like early marriages everywhere in the world, but in France, that's kind of like our big early marriage problem. So I was wondering what you thought about that, these families that kind of like send back their daughters to their countries of origins to get married when they have made kind of a life in another country. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a very important issue, because you are bringing an issue of migration and how communities live their cultures in the other countries to which they've migrated to, and why it is important for legislation for the protection of girls in the countries where they're living. So for instance, if a girl living in France is to be forced to go back to her country, she should get protection by the legislation in France. That is very important as the first step. But as we are also saying, the underlying issue is about the family whisking the child away to their country of origin. And this is where we need a multi-pronged approach, where the legislation across the continents, across the countries, should address this issue, but at the same time that we should address the cultural issues and maybe understand why that family, why there is still need for forced marriage when the family has other opportunities, because it stops to be just an issue of poverty. It means there are other underlying factors, and those are the factors that needs also to be addressed.
Thank you. Sophia, I think you have a question.
Hi, I'm from Mexico, and I think that one thing that I want to remark is that in Mexico child marriage is very low, the rate, but the thing is the girls that are not forced, I mean, the children that are married young is because they get pregnant before they get married, so usually they get married. So I don't know what would be a solution for these girls that are already married with her husbands. The husbands are almost always the same age that hers, that share the responsibility of the child, but most of them want to get continue her studies.
We have the YWCA has programs in Mexico. We have a program in Naucalpan and in Guadalajara. And what you are saying is true, that the issue is more of teenage pregnancy. And once there's teenage pregnancy, the young girl would have to find ways of taking care of the baby, maybe together with the man who is responsible, or maybe not. So the issue is that we need to have good quality sexual and reproductive health programs for young women, where there is good information around sexuality, education, appropriate services for young people, and also that there is support when somebody has an experience with teenage pregnancy. That girl, that young woman should not be left on her own. We need support services within our communities, within our governments, in order to address the issue, because it is very traumatizing at times for the young women to drop out of school, to take care of the baby with no job, with no child care, and at times the family is very unhappy. And so we need a much more integrated support in a way that helps young women to have the opportunity to make good decisions about relationships, because it's about relationships, but it's also about sexuality education. And ultimately, we need good access to opportunities for young women and girls, because if young women and girls have opportunities, education, employment, livelihoods, they're able to negotiate relationships, because we know some of the young women enter into these relationships because they are also either exploited or they have limited choices. So I think the program that you have in the Girls 20 Summit on looking at how do we invest in girls is essentially also a preventive way for addressing issues like teenage pregnancy. So we need both a prevention programs, but also we need support programs. It's not sufficient to prevent, because there are girls who are experiencing teenage pregnancy now or child marriage now who need support now.
Nyaradzayi, as the delegates think about their next couple of questions, I'm going to jump in. You alluded to a recent trip that you have taken in Canada. Next time, don't come to Canada unless I'm there, first of all. But on behalf of Morgan, who I'm sure was curious when you talked about this, can you please elaborate on what you were talking about in terms of, like, it's not lost on me that Canada does in fact have incidences of child marriage, but you spoke very specifically about the Aboriginal communities.
Yes, I was in Canada and was in Winnipeg, and we visited the youth center and also met with colleagues from Yellowknife. One of the young women who spoke to us, Shanine, is from the First Nation, from the Indigenous community. And she brought it very clearly to us that we must address in Canada the issues affecting young women from the First Nations, Indigenous, from the Indigenous communities, access to opportunities, the inequalities that exist, but also that at times, there is an assumption in the world that if countries have a good GDP, it results in equality of opportunities for all, which is not necessarily the case. We still have communities who do not have access in countries which are developed. So I would equally make a call and encourage you, as you make a call to the G20 heads of states and summits, that they should also create and support young women who are on the margins of society in the G20 countries, where some of those girls end up experiencing the same issues that we have discussed of exclusion, lack of access to education opportunities, or lack of, therefore, finding themselves with limited options for jobs and or experiencing teenage pregnancy. It struck me very much when I heard the story, but also to see what the YWCA in their girls space and the girls leadership program is doing in Canada, I was quite excited to see the opportunities that we also have as organizations to reach out to those who might be on the margins in countries like Canada.
Mm-hmm. So we have about 10 minutes left, and I know that you had a lot more to share. So I think, delegates, do you have any questions, or can we give the floor? Yes, you do. Okay, please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Helen from China. So recently in the discourse of development, there's terms like top-down or bottom-up development, so more like a linear process. But an alternative way of looking at it is a more integrative, kind of non-linear way of the process itself. And because YWCA is such a huge network with so many different countries and different levels of engagement, so how do you think, how is this achieved in your organization, or what do you think this concept means to the G20 as well?
Thanks for that wonderful question. Yes, we need to have an integrated approach that listens and lifts the voices and the knowledge and the experiences that are in communities in a very fundamental way. I remember visiting China and coming to Nanjing and experiencing some of the issues and the lives that women go through. So I think we need that integrated approach where we are able to listen to the voices, but also we need an approach where the leadership is accountable. We need accountability fundamentally because at this moment in the world, our governments, including the G20 countries, have committed to the Convention to Eliminate Discrimination Against Women. They have signed to agreements to do with the rights of the child, which includes the girl child. We were in Beijing in 1995, your own country, and we had this amazing Beijing conference on women where we identified the 12 critical areas of concern. But what we have seen recently is insufficient is that there are good policy commitments. We have good policies. They may not be sufficient, but they're there. But what is not ultimately being done is implementation. So even the discussion we are having around child marriage, in some countries the laws exist, but what is not there is sufficient programs to translate the policies into doable, impactful programs in communities. And that requires good resource allocation. So my call to the G20 would be prioritize your budgets in a way that you put more resources to programs that provide education and economic empowerment for girls and young women, and also for boys. But that is one practical way of an integrative program. An integrative program which is listening to what is needed in communities, but at the policy level, our governments putting in place the resources and the legislation. And the second piece of integration that I would like to talk about is that we live in a global village where there is movement of people. Our sister from France talked about migration, but equally, I see the migration happening as labor migration, as migration due to conflict. You know, people move from one country to another because of wars. It means fundamentally that the integrated approach we need is also to take care of each other across our borders. So we need global policies, global laws that can protect the girls, but also unleash their potential.
Nyaradzayi, I don't know if you can see the girls very closely, but as you've been speaking, they've been on their Nexus tablets looking up facts and figures about child marriage and World YWCA. So I think you've got some potential new partners for yourself. Listen, we only have about 5 or 6 minutes, and if the delegates don't have any other questions, I'll just do a quick check. No. One of the things that I love the most about the Girls 20 Summit is that we do have the ability to bring people like you in front of what I feel are going to be the next leaders of our globe. So tell us some stuff about you that is going to inspire these young ladies. You have an incredible background. We'd like to hear a bit more about you. I didn't have a chance to really talk about you, but what does success look like for you? What makes you you know, tick? What makes you happy? What makes you, and I don't mean like, you know, you get 7 hours of sleep or you know, I think that stuff's important, but what makes you happy? You get on planes constantly. You have unbelievable energy. Tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you so much, Farah, for touching the sensitive piece about the heart. I think first is to know that in each one of us is a leader. You are a leader in your own life. Whatever decision you make every day about your life is a very important decision. So for me, that is the first spot, is to say, for the young women, for the girls, you are not leaders of tomorrow, you are leading today because you are making decisions today. It might just be a decision of what you are doing this summer, but that is a decision because it shapes your life. The second is with my background, born in Zimbabwe, in the rural area, going to the city when I was almost a big girl. All the issues we talk about around poverty, around exclusion, girls who grow up in war, girls who are orphans, it's me. But what my mother said, and which I want to share with you, is that your personal circumstances, whether in poverty or whatever, should never rob you of your dignity. Your dignity is inherent and your potential is inherent. What you need to do is to continue to reach out to protect your dignity, but also find people around you that can unleash your potential. So for me, the unleashing of the potential in each one of us drives me every day, because I know there is a great person, a great leader, a great innovator, a great entrepreneur, a great friend in each person in the world. But at times we just don't have the opportunity to unleash that potential. So I celebrate any initiative that reaches out to unleashing the potential. The third, just to share about myself, which has been an amazing experience and journey, is to be able to experience life in my village, asking where does the bus come from, and you can Google me on World Pulse and read my stories about my personal life, about my yellow dress with red buttons, about where does the bus come from, just to know a little bit about my background, but also that I have had this incredible opportunity to serve in my government as a law officer, to be able to lead in the United Nations as the regional director for UNIFEM, and to work with UNICEF, and to remain so engaged with the United Nations now, and to know that it is possible to move from a space of vulnerability to a space of leadership. And this is why, Farah, when you invited me, I said, for me, what drives me, for every young woman, every girl in the world, is that move from the space of vulnerability to the space of voice and to the space of leadership, because you are leaders.
Nyaradzayi, that is, I don't know what else to say, except that I think that is so inspirational advice. And if everyone sort of could take down that recipe, I think the G20 leaders could probably just move aside and we could just have our own G20 in September. But I'm not sure, and I should know this, but you know, over the past couple of days, we've had the girls go through a number of different workshops, and one of them today was put on by Girl Up and by the United Nations Foundation, and they talk about leadership. And in the previous couple of days, they've heard from Norton Rose Fulbright, who actually had the girls go through their leadership assessment, where when you go through the Myers-Briggs testing, you learn about yourself, you learn about your capacities. Tell me, when you went through your own sort of process in life, you know, did you have some of the same tools? I think the fact that Girl Up exists and they build these communities of young women actually is a game changer. And things like Myers-Briggs assessment tools will allow these girls to understand that they have capacities that perhaps they did not know about. How did you realize your leadership capacities? What tools did you have?
Definitely, when I was growing up, we didn't have Google+. So thank you to Google for creating this tool to enable young women to unleash their potentials. and a couple of tools that was available. The first tool was to be in a space with other girls. And for me, that was very important growing up, that I was not alone. I was able to be in a space, in clubs, in school, at university, to be in social justice groups. So that possibility of being with others who share the same values is very important as an approach. The second, which was very important for me growing up, is take every opportunity to learn. So if there are things to sign up for a half-day workshop, just go for it. And also don't go for things you know only. Explore the new frontiers. I would go to a training on things which have nothing to do with law, but maybe to do with economics or to do with medicine. Not because I just wanted to know other things which can inform my own life and my own career. So I think the tool of creating a learning plan for yourself and to go beyond the comfort zones is very important, so that you are always going beyond what you know and you are willing to explore the other. I think the last, which was very, very important for me, especially in the recent past, was to be able to have the possibility of using the online information, which is massive, and go to Nike Foundation website, go to UN Foundation tools, but also to have those tools which enables me, including spending time at Syracuse University, going through the Myers-Briggs test, but just to be able to be in a space where you get other tools to learn about the self and the other. The critical tools that I also found important was not just about knowing self-awareness, but managing relationship, conflict. How do you receive feedback? Because in the world you will receive feedback. Some of the feedback is not feedback you want to hear, but feedback which is important, which might not be feedback that I think your session was really not good. And you need to be able to say, so how can I improve on it, instead of taking negatively? So look for tools which addresses the uncomfortable issues of leadership, because that's also how you learn more. And those tools were so fundamental in terms of my own leadership skills, to know how to manage conflict, how to manage diversity, how to manage difference, but also how to receive feedback and how to give feedback. Because those critical tools, especially as a leader, are so essential. And also how to lead from a perspective of not seeking to do what is popular, but seeking to do what is right. Because at times what is right is not necessarily popular, but you need to be able to stand tall to your decision and be able to say the basis on which you made it, and then mobilize your teams around it, mobilize your constituency around it. But those are some of the fundamental tools that I found very important for my work. But ultimately it's the networks. And thanks, Farah, for coming to Geneva, for coming to meet with me, for just spending time and for us exchanging ideas. I'm just finding the Girls 20 Summit is one of the critical tools of influencing the G20 summits, the heads of states, because you are not just there as individuals, but you are there as an idea of lifting critical space that our governments need to listen to their citizens. And the young women, the delegates there, are a critical sample of the citizens within which the heads of states have to listen to as they shape policy and deliver programs. So I'm so excited to be part of the 2013 Girls Summit this year.
Well, Nyaradzayi, thank you very much. Actually, you're part of the Girls 20 Summit family now, so we're not going to let you off the hook anymore. We're going to have you drawn into what we do. And I want to just reflect really quickly before we say goodbye and say I think it's really important what you said about getting out of your comfort zone. When I was growing up, getting out of my comfort zone, unfortunately for my parents, meant trying to learn the drums, the guitar, and doing a whole bunch of other things that probably I was not well skilled to do. But I do think it's important to get out of your comfort zone for some of those for some of the delegates in the room, that meant getting on a plane and coming to Moscow, which is the first step. So thank you so very much for joining us. Please, a round of applause for Nyaradzayi.
And my own applause to all the amazing events.
All right. Take care.